Welcome everyone, apreciados amigos y amigas. Que alegría que estemos todos juntos aquí en la Iglesia de Todos los Santos. Dear friends, it's wonderful to have all of us here at All Saints Church, here virtually still. Mi nombre es Mike Kinman. My name is Mike Kinman. Soy Rector. I am the Rector. Mi pronombres son él. My pronouns are he, him. Just fantastic to have everyone here. This forum that we're having this morning, it is going to be a look forward. We had an amazing annual meeting last month, and we were able to really celebrate the incredible work that this community has done over the last year of the pandemic, and also talk about some of the challenges. This time we're casting our gaze into the future. And we're going to be giving you some updates on some things that are going on. And we're also going to be, talking about, well, what have we learned and what are we learning and what are our hopes for the future? And there's going to be space for you to participate too. So if you are watching on our live stream page or on Facebook or YouTube, we'd love to have you actually join us on Zoom. And you can get that link by going to our live stream page on the website. So you just go to allsaints-pas.org, click in the upper left-hand corner where it says live stream, and you go to that page and it'll have the Zoom link. So it's a couple steps there, but then you come into the Zoom room, and we're going to be having a chance several times during this. First of all, anytime we're going to be gathering questions. The last part of this is really just going to be your questions and thoughts, and so you can use the Q&A feature for that. And we're also going to be asking you to share stuff in the chat that we're going to be sharing as we sort of look at things that are facing our community and opportunities. So just keep on, coming into the Zoom room and joining us here. And then we'll be back on the live stream page and Facebook and YouTube for worship at 11:15 and 1 o'clock. Want to say thanks as always to Erica Tamblin and her amazing crew who come out and do the Sunday food table. We gave out 55 lunches and 80 masks today, so thank you so much to them. For more than a year now, since the pandemic began, we have had a partner in love every week, and it's a different, usually it's a local organization that we want to highlight. That is doing amazing work in the community that we're encouraging all of us to financially support. This week, we're supporting important work done by a friend of All Saints Church that we knew here locally who has gone back home to Minneapolis. Since George Floyd was murdered by police nearly a year ago, Janelle Austin, and she's been a guest in the Rector's Forum several times. She used to be the director of the Pinnell Center for African American Church Studies at Fuller, and now she is the caretaker of the George Floyd Global Memorial in Minneapolis. And the memorial has become a center of the protest movement in Minneapolis, and a powerful example of how art can fuel movements for justice. Also in the last week, it has become a place where Janelle has been training caregivers at Brooklyn Center, which is where Daunte Wright was murdered. So in the chat, you can actually just go to GeorgeFloydGlobalMemorial.org, GeorgeFloydGlobalMemorial.org. That's going to go in the chat, and you can learn more about the memorial, and you can give as generously as you can. So thank you for that. Before we get going, I'd love us to just gather in prayer. And here's a prayer that I stumbled on and I've been using fairly regularly over the last several weeks. And it's an adaptation of a prayer written by our friend Becca Stevens. So God dwells in you.
And also in you.
Thank you. O Christ, we gather in your holy name, in your spirit of mercy as solid as the ground upon which we make our stand. Help us recall when we were hungry, afraid, sick, or imprisoned by bonds and burdens. May that mercy be forged into compassion that loves the whole world without judgment. Forgive us again when we fail to show mercy or come into your temple for solace only and not for strength. Pardon our blindness when we didn't see you in the person we called our enemy. Help us let go of tired bitterness passed on by generations who forgot the freedom of forgiveness. Unite us in the truth that love is the most powerful force for change, and teach us to preach love in action. And the blessing of God, Creator, Christ, and Holy Spirit be upon us and remain with us this day and forevermore. Amen. So we've got a great group here this afternoon. Good Lord, I'm a little weary this morning. This morning, thank you. And there are members of our vestry and some staff and just amazing folks who are going to be, helping us take a look into the future and sort of peer into the next couple months. And so, so glad to have here Christine Hartman and Jim Albarano and Juan Mejia and Julianne Hines and Monique Thomas, our wardens, and Sally Howard and Steve Williams. I think Walter Little is also here. And so just thank you all for joining us. And want to start off really by just sort of asking a question. And as I ask this question to sort of the panelists that we have and the folks here, I really encourage all of you to put what your answer is in the chat feature. And so here's the question, which is simply, what have we learned and what are we learning? What have you learned and what are you learning during this time of pandemic? And Jim, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking about it. One of the things that has really been on my heart in the last couple of weeks is the power of solidarity. And I think it's something I knew in theory before 2020, but I really felt the power of people standing together, empathizing with each other. I feel like over the last year, different groups in our congregation have felt different levels of pain and different levels of attack from the world, and we've each taken turns standing with each other, and it's been incredible to see. And I feel like I'm still just scratching the surface. I feel like there's so much more to just the beloved community and solidarity and linking arms that we have yet to discover. And so I found that very enriching.
Great, thank you. Christine.
Good morning. In thinking about this question, I think the biggest thing for me, among many others, is how we can have opportunities to connect during non-crisis times. I think that what this taught us was, we reached out and we tried to make sure everybody was doing okay and make sure people knew we were here, which was really important, especially when all of this really first hit. And what can we learn from that about, with such a large congregation, how we connect with each other on a more consistent basis and in a more thoughtful basis. And also another thing that I think came out of this is how we connect with folks who maybe aren't totally online. That's still, I think, a portion of our community that we can continue to work on, how to reach out and connect with those folks as well.
Thank you so much, Christine. Julianne.
Yeah, this is a great question. I think for me, what's really stood out is the degree to which we need to really center relationships. Our world and our society really focuses so much on the work and, sort of like that work ethic and that we're busy and getting things done. And this time has just shown us that we can't get any of it done unless we're centering people, unless we're tending to our relationships. I just recently was listening to a podcast, and I can't remember her first name now, but Dr. Egger really talked about how you show love with time. Like, time is how you show love to people. And I'm realizing it's not the quantity so much, but the quality of time and how we're really listening and centering and focusing on people.
Wow, thank you so much. I want to jump in and read some of what's coming into the chat. Jenny Berman says, I've learned the church is so much more than a building. Connections at All Saints have helped me so much this year, that wherever we are and how we experience the pandemic, there is a place for us here and we are accepted. John says the answer to who is my neighbor. Bert Voorhees says how deeply we need to address issues of race, racism, racial equity, and racial justice at All Saints in Pasadena and in our nation. Sally, why don't you jump in? What are you learning? What have we learned?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Mike.
You know, I think one of the things for me is just seeing how resilient and creative this community is. I mean, I feel like I've known that, but the kinds of things that came out of the community, like the community response team and the community care team, and even, you know, within the staff, the liturgy team with Keith and Melissa and Lee Chung and Jenny. And I was thinking of Jenny's banjo lessons, but
Ukulele,
you know, ukulele, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, ukulele. Again, just I think reminded that even when the path forward isn't clear, or the ways that sometimes it feels like there is not a way forward, that spirit, God's spirit of love and life continues and emerges in new ways.
Yeah. Actually, I think I'm going to jump in and sort of answer this question too, and just sort of riff off some of the things that you were saying, Sally. In addition to everything that everyone has been saying, it really has driven home to me the power and the importance of art and music. You know, one of the things I was meeting online with a group of parishioners yesterday, and everyone was just talking about how much we miss singing together. And there is that piece of us that we're all created as artists, and we've had amazing artists help us get through this pandemic. And people have found new artistic abilities in themselves. And we miss coming together in song and how important that is, of all of us singing together. So that's a piece of what I think I always knew it on some level, but it's really been driven home. And then the other piece is I'm learning that as we come back together, I'm feeling a huge need to do two things. And that's to grieve and then also to celebrate. And I got all the feels right now. You know, I've got so much sadness in me right now for all the loss. And I have so much gratitude and joy because of the love that I continue to feel in this community and the way I see God's presence. And I'm learning that, you know, we need to provide space for individuals and for us as a community, both to grieve and to celebrate. So, Juan, you got a couple weeks break after stepping down as senior warden, and we dragged you back in. How would you answer this question?
I'm like Michael Corleone.
That's right.
Pulling me back in.
Pull you back in.
Good morning. What I've learned, this is a great question. What I've learned is that technology has allowed us to continue the church experience. The talents of our staff and volunteer have allowed us to continue to offer a great worship service with great preaching, amazing music. It's also, you know, the old saying about in every crisis, there's an opportunity. This has been an opportunity for us to reach people across the world that had never heard of a message like the one that is offered at All Saints. And I think that is something that we can continue to build on. We have that amazing new website. We're now on different platforms, like you mentioned earlier, Facebook, YouTube, our streaming service. I think it's a great opportunity to show a different side of Christianity to many parts of the world. So I'm very grateful, as I mentioned in my annual address a couple of weeks ago, to the volunteers and to this amazing staff at All Saints for the creativity and hard work that they put in this very, very difficult year. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, someone's just come on in. Oh, thanks. Sorry, someone's motioning at my door. Thank you, Juan. I want to read some more stuff that's coming in the chat. Stu Rosen says, for me, technology has turned isolation into intimacy during this time. And Sharon also says that intentional connecting online can be as or more intimate than in big group or in person. Art McDermott said, I learned how committed and generous our parishioners are to All Saints. Thank you for supporting us as we respond to the pandemic and our financial challenges. And Judy Andrews says, I've learned that there are congregations all over the internet that are responding to the changes needed in our churches and culture as far as prejudice, justice, and openness to differences among us. It gives me hope and makes me feel less alone in the struggle. Let's jump over to Monique.
Good morning. I echo many of what our parishioners and everyone on this panel has said, but for me, it's really been gratitude, and really leaning into and relearning gratitude. I think, you get so busy with life that the little things, traffic, oh, the sanctuary is so cold today, like all the things that we sort of complain about that you miss in this time and in the valley. And I feel like for me, it's made me step into a different relationship with my family, my friends, to be more intentional, to be more present. And I started doing a gratitude journal again of these are the things that, with everything that's happening, I actually posted on Facebook, those of you who follow me, what are you grateful for today? Because when I'm feeling down and I'm feeling just sort of despondent, I need something to keep me grounded in, but at least I have this, and at least I have, this community, which is wonderful. So for me, what I've learned is a new meaning, and richness of gratitude.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Monique. Steve, why don't you wrap us up for this segment? Whoop, you're muted. Steve has learned that he needs to turn off his mute when he talks.
No, what I actually learned was that no matter how much you practice unmuting, you never get it right.
That's right.
That is the one thing during this pandemic. You'd think that would be the simplest sort of thing, but it still is something to be worked on. But there's so much that has really happened, and I think a lot of the work I've had to do on myself. I think I've had to spend more time being introspective and really learn as much about myself and an opportunity that did not exist before to see what I can do. I've learned that, Mike, in challenging times, things get revealed. And I think one of the things that was revealed is that the inequities that exist and the gaps in our society are, for providing basic needs to people has just gotten bigger. Yeah. And the thing is that they just didn't appear. They've been here all along. And I think that's really the issue, is that, okay, what do we do about that? It's called me to be more focused on what I can do to help those in need and to resist the urge to retreat and turn away. And I find that this was scary times, and you wanted to really just hide and say, okay, how can I avoid all these things? This is why I appreciate Erica Tamlin and her group, and Sally and what's going on. And I think I learned that people fall through the cracks, and I need to really find out where they are. Thank goodness for the CCT and the CRT, and remind them that they're a part of our community. Not everybody embraces technology, and we found that out, right? There was a lot of people in our church that were making phone calls and wondering why we couldn't connect with people. But I've also found out that All Saints Church is so resilient. There are so many creative and people that are ready to run into the fire and not away from the fire. There were a lot of tough conversations and meetings that we had during this time with no game plan, but we had to come up with a game plan. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Amen to all of that. Clara, someone you know well, says, answers the question, the Zoom connection has brought me closer to my family. That's good news for you, Steve. Friends and the All Saints community. I've enjoyed the election watch party, Lenten dance nights, and the forums and racial justice events. Art McDermott also says, we also got to know our friends who were shut in, disabled, or live far from us via our online services, including the ASC diaspora. We need to bring them along with us post-pandemic. And then Mary Bush says, I learned that my church is there for all of us and continues to work to include all. I also learned how important we all are to each other and how strongly we want and need to connect with each other. So thankful for Zoom, bringing us together with events, book groups, racial justice work, etc. And the Reverend Anderson Marsh says, I'm not a part of your amazing church community, but have been so gifted and challenged by your sermons. Thank you from the UK. Well, thank you. I think the church needs to learn more about lament to acknowledge how we truly feel. And please know that our hearts are with you in the United Kingdom, because you're in a moment of lament right now for Prince Philip. And that's a huge moment in your country. I know my dad is British, and that's, we feel this over here, but not the same way you feel it over there. So please know that our hearts are with you. We want to give you some updates on things, and then already people are sort of putting some things in the Q&A, and also to let you know, we understand. Thank you for those of you who have said that there's some audio issues. We think it's pretty systemic with Zoom right now. Just maybe the system's overloaded, so we have folks working on it. I think they're sort of resolving themselves. So thanks for that. Want to just give you some updates on some things as we look forward. And I know when we talk about coming out of the pandemic, one of the biggest things that we all think about is, when are we going to be able to come together in worship? And so I just want to sort of run through, and some of you will have heard us say this before, but I just think the consistency of understanding the structure for making these decisions is so important. So first of all, what I'm putting in the chat, which is just the place you should always look for this stuff, is the page on our website for the updated COVID-19 protocols. And that's where you will always be able to look to find the latest in these protocols. So that's going in the chat. And you can also just go to the website and just search COVID, and it'll take you right to it. So we operate on 3 different levels. We have, the first is the state level and the local level, which is, what's Governor Newsom saying? What are our county and local public health officials saying? What are the rules? What are the guidelines? We want to make sure that we're following those because in addition to keeping ourselves safe, we recognize that we have a leadership function in this community, and particularly at a time where there are some communities of faith that are not following these rules, and great harm is happening. And so we want to make sure we are leading in doing the best things for public health. Second thing is, we're an Episcopal church, walking with a revolutionary Jesus. And the Episcopal church piece of that means that we're a part of a diocese. And Bishop Taylor has really been an amazing leader through this process. He has gathered a group of folks who are public health professionals and others. And there are diocesan rules and guidelines that come down. And we need to make sure that we're following those, because we're all in this together with the rest of the diocese. And then there's our congregation. And so once we look at, well, what's the state and local, California, LA County, Pasadena saying, what's the diocese saying within that arena, then we say, well, what can we do and make sure we're doing it safely? And this is where I'm so grateful for Dr. Nicole Gatto, who is an epidemiologist and member of this congregation. Sally Howard and others are working with her. And that's where we develop our specific protocols for All Saints Church. So what you'll see on that website is the protocols that we have developed. And so, there are things that we can do right now. Like we're starting to, I'm in my office right now. We're starting to be able to say, this is how we can maybe, come back. Staff is looking at sort of how can we maybe start to come back to work on campus. We're able to live stream services from the sanctuary. We had a period earlier this year where we couldn't do that because there was a spike. Right now, we're exploring this question of coming back on 2 levels. The first is, what can we do right now? And what we know we can do right now is, we know that the church can be open more hours for personal prayer. And that's really just dependent on volunteers who are able to staff that, but we know how to do that safely. We're looking at staff starting to return to offices. We're looking at how we can maximize use of outdoor space. We've been having the drum circle on the lawn. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, what will we be able to do as things continue to improve? And that is continuing, including worshiping together indoors. So the stage we're at right now here, sort of in the middle of April, is we're literally just trying to list all the questions that will need to be addressed. Melissa Hayes is amazing and led us through an amazing, wonderful liturgy team meeting on Tuesday, where we just sort of broke down all the different parts of worship and says, if we're going to be coming together, what are the questions? I'm trying to answer them yet, but just list the questions that will need to be addressed. And our music leaders are a part of that. Our youth ministers are a part of that. The clergy, everyone, Keith and our communication staff is a part of that. I'm really proud that as we have reopened at various times, we've done so very carefully and in ways that have not put anyone in danger. And so there's a lot we know how to do right now. And right now we're at the stage of, we're just looking at, and we're going to start to answer, ask and answer the questions of what needs to happen. One of the things that we have known for a while is, when we come back together, it's not going to be like turning on a light switch. It won't be one Sunday we're live streaming from the nave and the next Sunday the place is packed. Throughout the pandemic, we have really kind of tried things on in small amounts to see if we can do them safely. Like we opened up the church for a little bit during the week of the election to see if we could do that safely. We didn't know that 300 people weren't going to come crushing into the church, and that was going to create a problem and say, okay, we can't do that safely. Same thing happened with Drum Circle. Are we going to get 300 people coming? We realized, no, that's something that we can do safely. As we look to return to in-person worship on Sundays, we're likely to do some trial runs of things to see how they go. Now, of course, the big question is, well, when? When is this going to happen? And I want to be clear, like none of us obviously have a crystal ball. On one level, I'm excited that the governor wants to reopen the state, except for rescinding the mask mandate on June 15th. On the other level, it's like, I really hope that that doesn't cause another spike. We don't know. We have to wait and see. Right now, I'm going with what the bishop is telling us, which is he says that he hopes that we can be together in some form, worshiping indoors, wearing masks by mid-September. So we're setting homecoming as a goal for being back together. That doesn't mean we're guaranteeing that, and it doesn't mean that we're saying absolutely nothing before then. It means that that's what we're looking at right now as our timetable, and we're operating under that assumption that we'll be back there in that form. You may be, part of this may be surveys that ask you all questions and say, how likely are you to come to church on Sunday? What are your concerns? What do you most want to see as we come back together? We're a large congregation that presents both some real gifts and some special challenges for us while we do this. So we can talk more about that later on if you have questions. I want to move on to just a couple more things briefly. Part of coming back is we're coming back as a different staff. We have said goodbye to some people, and we're also welcoming some new people here. We are thrilled that we have hired a half-time coordinator of networking, whose task is to really help the community connect with each other and people connect with ministries, and particularly new people to the community get better connected to All Saints Church. And could not be more pleased and thrilled that Thomas Diaz has joined the staff as our coordinator of networking. You'll also remember that we have money in this budget for a third associate rector, a fourth full-time priest. This one is someone who is going to help us focus our work on racial justice, be really involved not just in peace and justice work, but in our what we're calling learning across the lifespan formation work. We have a great search committee: Flor Quintanilla, Adelaide Esseln, Alfredo Ferragrino, Sally Howard, Kathy Kegg, Claudia Shields, Monique Thomas, Trula Worthy-Clayton, and I. We have some excellent candidates. I am continuing to recruit actively other excellent candidates. Everything is moving more slowly than we had hoped and thought because of the pandemic. We are hopeful to begin Zoom interviews with candidates, I would hope by sometime next month. Because this is a national search, both bringing people in and possibly going to visit people where they are going to be a part of the process. We want to get this right. And getting the right person is much more important than getting someone here quickly. And because travel needs to be a part of this, probably our ability to do that will depend on the progress of vaccination and the reduction of the pandemic nationwide. We have funding to have this person here by August. That may be possible. It may not, depending on a whole bunch of factors, like do they have to relocate a family and how far away are they coming from? If we hire someone who's already here in LA, well, that's a lot easier. If we hire someone who's in Saskatchewan, well, that's harder. And so that's want to let you know that is happening. It is moving. I'm really excited about the list of candidates that we have and continuing to have conversations about that. And if you're interested in the job posting, I just put that in the chat also. Two other things really quickly. Part of our staff restructuring is an administration and finance transition. The staff reorganization eliminated the parish administrator position as it was then constituted. And we said we needed to bring in some outside eyes to look at our policies, procedures, and structures in administration and finance, and then make some recommendations for how we can do things differently in that area, or if we need to do things differently. We have a great administration and finance transition team, and interviewed several organizations that specialize in this. We settled on a really great one called Mission Well, which is doing just what I said. They will be delivering an assessment to us in the coming weeks. which the Finance Committee, Personnel Committee, Wardens, and I will use to help chart a course forward. Jim Albarano has stepped up in just amazing ways and spent so many hours as our treasurer. Jim, I'm wondering, can you just sort of speak briefly to sort of the work that Mission Well is doing?
Sure. Yeah, they've been fantastic. But as Mike said, everything is happening a little bit slower in COVID times. But what they've done is over Zoom, they've scheduled interviews with a lot of our key personnel to understand how our bookkeeping works, how accounts payable works, and just look at all our systems. There's a lot of ways that we can just increase efficiency and use latest best practices. Mission Well has tons of experience with churches, so they are coming with a whole bunch of knowledge. So they finished most of their interviews. They have a couple more to do. They hope to get a final report to us next week, which will kind of give us their recommendations and their assessment of everything. And in the meantime, as Mike had mentioned, they're helping us with a few of the day-to-day tasks, like running a report, and so that we can have a financial report to give to finance and vestry. And also they are helping us with our PPP loan. We do have a great rep at our bank, but the nice thing is Mission Well also has the experience of how to get these things processed in quickly. So yeah, they're moving along well, and I think next week we should have a lot of answers from them. So I look forward to reporting more soon.
Great, Jim, and thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. And the ways that you've stepped in. I also want to give a shout out to Kimberly Hudson, who is our finance chair, for the work that she's doing. And on our staff, Zach DeJeanette and Debbie Daniels, everyone's been doing incredible work. But Zach and Debbie have really picked up a lot of extra stuff in this time of transition. I'm just so deeply grateful for them. Other thing briefly is, as we've talked about, the restructuring involves us moving from a previous, fairly top-down structure, very traditional structure of staff, to what we have come to refer to as the circles model. And this is a more collaborative model that maximizes creativity. It uses some of the best in organizational developmental thinking. And it really is an attempt to move from a hierarchy of dominance to hierarchies of support. It's also deeply grounded in our identity as a Eucharistic community. Our basic gathering is a circle around a Eucharistic table. This is also, like, we are incredibly blessed. We're blessed to have Sally Howard no matter what. In addition to being a phenomenal priest and a trauma therapist and a marriage and family therapist, she also has training and has been continuing to get training in organizational dynamics and community culture, and including some work that she's done at the Harvard Business School on models just like this. And so it was just a natural to have Sally run point on this. And so I've asked, and she's been doing a great job working with this transition. So Sally, I'm wondering if you could talk briefly about how things are going and kind of what's happening with the transition to the circles model.
Absolutely, and thank you, Mike. We are making our way and working on the model together. I'm really very excited by it, and I think what it will bring us as a community. And we have defined 6 circles, and they are overlapping, but they also have distinct tasks. And we've both designated what tasks are under each circle. We have a draft of staff assignments, and really, in an exciting way, congregational teams. So these circles are going to include staff and, the larger community in building our structures going forward. We've defined the role of the convener, and we've made assignments about who is going to convene those circles. And really next, we're turning to the development of a model of collaborative supervision. There are those kind of models out there that are really focused on helping staff thrive within, the larger values and needs of the organization. We're working closely with the Personnel Committee, with Trula, Worthy Clayton, and Michelle Wheatman, and Chris Fultz, who's been particularly involved in working on a review process that allows for joint goal setting and feedback. And after that, we are turning our attention to intentional culture, meaning really thinking together about what kind of culture do we want to create? What do we want to bring with us? What new things do we want to bring?
And we will be working with the CCEJ staff, internal resources, and there is a lot of research out there on how to thrive even more as an organizational culture of diversity and working towards beloved community.
Sally, thank you so much. And thanks for all your work. And I really appreciate, I mean, this is, please know, and just please keep the staff in your prayers, because transition, even to something that I believe is going to be really positive and good thing, transition, particularly out of a model that you've gotten used to for the whole time you've worked here, into something new. It's stressful, and it's happening at a time where just life is really stressful right now. So please keep the staff, as always, in your prayers. I want to jump over to our wardens, and we'll sort of start with Monique. And Sally, you mentioned an organization called CCEJ. That's the California Conference for Equality and Justice. Part of, as we look past the pandemic into where we are headed as a congregation, when we adopted the budget for 2021 and the restructuring plan, part of that was really claiming the work of dismantling white supremacy and anti-Black racism and becoming beloved community, as this is our generation's work in the church. It can't be a sideline. We need to develop that racial justice lens for everything that we do. And the vestry, your vestry, has started on that and is doing amazing work. And we are partnering so far with CCEJ, and they came in and did really an extraordinary vestry staff conference online. I mean, I was amazed at what was able to be accomplished online in 3 hours. And so Monique is our new senior warden. Julianne is our new junior warden. Can you all sort of talk about not just the conference, but about sort of the trajectory of this work as we come out of the pandemic?
Yes, absolutely. As Mike said, racial justice is the work of our generation. And I loved what Steve said during his comments, that these issues around racial justice and equality, equity, and inclusion are not new. Many things have been revealed to us, I think, and many of us who do this work knew that this was the issue, but I think for sort of our collective consciousness, many people didn't realize how far away we were from achieving this sense of equity. And so this is the work of our generation. As Mike said, so on March 20th, your vestry and staff got together for our annual vestry staff conference. And we really centered racial justice as the theme for this conference this year, and really rolled up our sleeves and did the work. We partnered with CCEJ, the California Conference for Equality and Justice, and our All Saints Racial Justice Advisory Board to really put together a day that would be focused on these topics and issues. We came out of that with really, I would say that in my time at All Saints, it was the most honest, intentional. We've done, and you know, that's not to erase any of the work that we've done previously. We've done incredible work and set some great foundations. But me as a vestry member, this was the most honest, brutally honest conversation that we've had about sort of race and equity in terms of All Saints ourselves, not turning the lens outward to what's happening in the world and how we can sort of be the answer, but how we can improve ourselves from the outside and what sort of conversations we need to have. And this is really the beginning of a learning journey for us as All Saints as a community. And so I want to turn it over to Julianne, our junior warden, to talk more about this journey and some of the work that's being done.
Thanks, Monique. Yeah, I think it's really important to keep in mind and frame this work as not a project that has a beginning, middle, and end. This is really ongoing work that I think we as a church community will always be invested in. It's not about defining a specific project. It's really about integrating, right? Integrating racial justice, integrating equity, integrating belonging into the overall life of our church, and how we weave that in and consider racial justice as a part of all of the work that we do, not as a subset of the work that we do. And that's why these partnerships, particularly I think with our job, are so important and so critical to the work. And I do want to just echo what Monique was saying, and Mike kind of referred to, that it really was an amazing conference that we were able to have, and we didn't know, being on Zoom, reflecting back to Sharon had put in the chat before about how intentional connecting online can be as much or more intimate than in a big group or in person. And I think we really saw that happen. There was part of me that wonders, like, we were all in our own space of our choosing, and how much does that really allow you to feel that intimacy and that comfort? So my audio. It's probably my computer, guys. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. You're good. You're okay now. So just like lean forward. Whatever you're doing right now, keep doing it.
I'll just lean for it. So yeah, part of the work that we are now invested in doing, we've established some working groups to really look at a couple of different areas. One is the land, right? The land that All Saints is located on, and the history of the land, and sort of the acknowledgement of that history, and how do we address that going forward. Looking at the windows in the church, the stained glass windows, and they are beautiful, right? Don't get me wrong. And they don't represent our entire community. And so how does that affect people in terms of belonging and feeling included? So have a subcommittee looking at that. And we also have a working group looking at finances of the church and the financial institutions that we engage with and partner with. So those are just some areas that we're really starting on this journey. And I think the work is to continue to see where else, right? And how else do we need to incorporate this work, and how else do we need to integrate this work, so that at the end of the day, All Saints is a community where we don't just say that everybody's welcome, but we show that. Mike mentioned before, love in action. How do we put love in action in the life of our church? So Monique, do you want to go ahead and talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Julianne. And I think, so this is really, although this is being led by the rector, by Mike, by the wardens, by the vestry, by RJAB, this is really all of our work. And so it's something that we need to think of as not, again, something that's happening out there, but what we as All Saints and we as individuals can really do to advance this work. And in terms of the entire life of the church, we're really talking about systemic change and a paradigm shift in the way that we sort of think about race and what it means to see things through a racial lens, whether that's the land, whether that's the windows, whether that's our finances. But it really is work for all of you. All of us are in this together. And so as we continue, there'll be opportunities, whether that's serving on RJAB or whether that's some of the committees that are being started, there'll be ways for you to engage. So I really do encourage you to, stay connected, stay informed in that, to find out ways that you can sort of plug into this work.
Yeah, thank you, Monique. And again, thank you for the leadership. And again, this is the Racial Justice Advisory Board has been really, their job is to advise the vestry and help give direction to the vestry on this leadership work for the entire congregation. One of the things that the Racial Justice Advisory Board did is furnish a reading and in some cases viewing list. And we're going to be making that public for the whole congregation. That's not just for the vestry, that's for everyone. So we can be, I love that language of a learning journey, so we can be on that together. And then the other thing that we're going to be doing is we're calling together a group that really is going to look at how do all these pieces fit together. We have the transition to circles. We have this core work of racial justice. We have coming together post-pandemic and the work we have to do of celebration and grieving and all these different things. How do we put it together and achieve a sense of strategic direction going forward? And we're calling a group together to look at that and start to have that conversation. We've got some questions that are starting to come in the Q&A feature. Please use that to ask whatever questions that you might have. Kathleen asks, as the captioning on Facebook is jumping around, could you turn the captioning on for Zoom, please? I'm actually not sure that that's something that we can do, but if it is possible, the intrepid Stu Rosen will do it. And so we've got that. And then I've got another question before we sort of jump into all your questions that you have, and encourage, again, you to sort of throw your answer to this into the chat. And it is, as we look to the future, it's really about your hopes. What are you most looking forward to in terms of the opening, reopening, the gathering together as a congregation? What is just what's giving you joy as you imagine that happening as we move outside of this pandemic? So Karen Luster already jumps in right away and says, hugging, Beverly Murata, hugs. I think this is going to be a theme. Christine, why don't you jump in?
Sure.
What are you most looking forward to?
I think the thing I'm really looking forward to, among so many things, is, there have been people I've talked to over this past year plus only on the phone, the only reason I'm talking with them is because we're in this situation, or people I've spoken with online and never met in person. And I know that I look at the participant list. I know there are some congregational response team volunteers who have reached out to people and have maintained these relationships via phone. And I just cannot wait to see these people in person. And whether it's a hug or an elbow bump, depending on where we're at the time, just it's just this new level of relationship, like what Julianne was talking about, this relationship, and having started these relationships on the phone or online, a little bit more disconnected, and then to connect physically, I think is just going to create these deeper, richer relationships overall that will just enhance our entire church life together. That's what I'm looking forward to the most.
Excellent. Amen. Jim, what are you looking forward to?
Hugs. Everybody stole my answer. Hugs, hugs, hugs. I can't wait. I haven't hugged a stranger. I guess it's been over a year. It's crazy. I can't wait. That's all. Yeah. I can't think past hugs.
That's great. Well, and again, you're not alone. And the other thing that's coming up a lot is like Carol Wallace is singing, Jenny Berman, hugs and singing, Jody, live music. And then Stu, you got a great idea. Can we serve cake and wish everyone a happy birthday? Because we've all had at least one lockdown birthday. And I know some people like Marin Tompkins, my administrative assistant, Marin's had 2 lockdown birthdays. So I think having a great idea, to do that, let's figure out what we've missed and let's do it. Let's have a giant senior prom, for, anyone. Let's just do this. So Juan, what are you most looking forward to? What's your hope?
Well, obviously, it's kind of the same side, the other side of the same coin that I talked about earlier about technology. What I'm looking forward to is the worship experience in person and in community. I'm really tired of looking at this computer screen. I'm looking forward to interacting with my fellow parishioners. I'm also looking forward to having an in-person vestry meeting, and maybe you and Monique will let me be senior warden for 5 minutes so that I could preside over a in-person vestry meeting. Would be awesome. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. I'm looking forward to that too.
Juan, it's done. You can do it.
Excellent. Judy says, because I live in New Mexico, I wonder how I will be able to stay connected when you go back to physical togetherness. I hope you will keep your online congregants in mind. Judy, that is a promise. One of the things that we have absolutely just committed to is, you're part of our community now. You're part of All Saints Church. We have people all over the world who are part of All Saints Church. We actually have a new diaspora small group for people, and it's an online small group for people who don't live in the LA area. We know, and we're going to have to figure out, how do we staff for this? How do we build capacity for this? We have to keep up as robust an online presence as we have had, in addition to coming back together, because it's not just that we want to make sure that we provide for you. You are an incredibly important part. We just had someone from the UK. You give so much to this community. And so do not worry about that. And then Susie asked, where are these comments being posted? I can't see them. That's because you can't see them. One of our security features is that comments only go to the panelists. And that's because if we get Zoom bombed, we don't want everyone to see that. So that's why I'm reading them out loud. Julianne, what are you hoping for?
Yeah, I'm echoing Candace in the chat. Really? I am really looking forward to being able to gather together and celebrate the Eucharist. It's a hugely meaningful tradition for me, because I was in a church for a long time where we weren't getting it. And so that was one of the things initially when I came to All Saints. And I also grew up in the Baptist tradition, so we only got like the once a month thing. So having Eucharist every week was so incredibly healing for me. And I'm really, really looking forward to that, and to being able to gather on the lawn and just hug people and celebrate people.
Yeah, amen. And I'll sort of answer my own question, and I just sort of echo everything that you've said. I'm looking forward to just doing this work of sharing stories face to face. We talked about the different groups, we're calling them the tell the whole story groups, telling the whole story groups about the land that we're on and about our windows. I'm interested in us just telling those stories together. I'm interested in coming face to face and just sharing what this year has been like. I loved those of you who sent in pictures on Maundy Thursday of this is what your Eucharistic table has been like. I want to see those. I want to hear these stories, and I want to be able to share them face to face. And for those of you who are online, I want to continue to look at how we can more and more integrate us all together in the community. And I am so looking forward to these amazing members of our community who are part of the Safe Haven program. They're really fully being integrated into the rest of the All Saints Church community as we come together, and we get to know, and so everyone else gets to know the amazing people that those of us who've been able to be on campus have gotten to know over the past year. Sharon says, looking forward to greeting in person monthly and praying we have hybrid opportunities to keep our enhanced group online connections vibrant. Amen. Celebrating Eucharist. The Artists Guild has promised to have computer in meetings to include Zoom participants. That's the kind of thing we're going to have to look at. And then Susie, my most fervent wish is to sing Amen. Alleluia. Monique, what are you looking forward to?
Yes, well, I echo the hugs. I cannot wait to hug folks on the lawn. I'm also looking forward to singing. I want to hear the music again. I so miss that. And I miss singing. I miss, I'm going to sing loudly and off key when I can, when we come back, even though I sing into, and I'm just going to sing off key because I can. But yeah, I'm looking forward. And I'm also looking forward to meeting people. I've met so many people online through this year that I've never met in person. I've served on committees with people and had deep conversations, and we've never been in the same room together. So I'm looking forward to meeting people and hugging them.
Amen. That sounds wonderful. Sally, how about you?
I've got to join everybody else and say I am really looking forward to the hugs. I am really looking forward to being able to hug you guys and receive some of those. It's been okay to preach and do services imagining, folks online, and we'll still continue to do that for those of you who aren't with us physically. But I'm really looking forward to having people in those pews and having, that kind of interaction. And, the other thing is I'm really hopeful and curious about how this experience of, the way so concretely that we are interconnected and our faiths are interconnected, right? And seeing, what kind of transformation is going to come out of that. We can have this illusion, or delusion really of separateness or individualism, and just seeing, what transformation is going to come out of this.
Mm-hmm. Amen. I hear you. And then we'll wrap up with Steve. And I want to be clear, when I figured the order of people sharing, I went first with alphabetically by last name and second by alphabetically by first name, and Steve ended up last in both of them. So, but it's also Steve, let's give you get the last word on this one, and then we'll continue to read the ones from the comments.
All right, great. I really appreciate it. It's because everybody has set up the space before me, and I concur with so much that everybody has really talked about, so I won't really repeat that at all. But one of the things that I've been introspective about is what I want to get back into the church. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I don't want to take for granted those hugs that were just incidental. You walk by, you walk out of the church, you hug somebody and whatever, but I think I'm going to savor those moments a little bit more and think more about them in terms of that exchange. I just remember this Easter, we had our first in a year gathering with our family, and there was an electrical impulse that really happened with that first hug. And I think we're all going to feel that, and that's going to really lift us up tremendously. But it's also made me really rethink about a physical church and what does it mean? And I'm going to be a visitor when I come back again. And I'm going to walk around and I'm going to look up in the air and I'm going to look into the corners and say, this is this place that I've really been in it. And I've never really taken it in. right?
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be really important. We've been really fortunate because technology has allowed us to have bigger and more participation in our racial justice ministry, our small groups, and those sort of things that we've never had before. When we physically had people having to come to the church, you know, we had numbers in the 20s or 30s, but we've had numbers in the 50s to 70s to 100s gathering. And I would love to keep those and people's interest up in the things that we do, because All Saints has so much to offer. So, and we talked about keeping our diaspora involved. That is really, what an opportunity. What an opportunity to reach out and have people that aren't really here. And I'll throw out something, Mike, that maybe All Saints, maybe we could have gatherings in other places other than the church. Maybe we could have small little things, and you know, that proscenium that's out in Old Town or whatever, but meet people in other places other than our church. We got to get beyond the walls, and I think there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, I remember when I was called here to be rector, and I remember the forum that, and I actually played some of this for the vestry at the beginning of the pandemic, and the forum when my name was introduced, and sort of the people on the search committee, you know, sort of said, well, this is what we're hoping. And the hopes weren't about me, because, you know, we all didn't know each other really yet. The hopes were, what were our hopes for ourselves? And one of the things that several of the people on the search committee said is, you know, we need to get out of the pews and into the streets. Well, we've spent the last year out of the pews. And so I think we lose something if we just say, okay, now we're going back into the pews again. Yeah, we're going to go back in there, but we got to, you know, we've been out here and we got to keep going out there, which is just incredible. And so thank you, Steve. I think there's so many opportunities. And I think, and this is conversations that we've had, you know, with Jenny and Wei Chung and folks, is like, I think about our music program. And, you know, this is an amazing gift, not just to All Saints, but to the community. And we need to use it more and more. Not just to bring people in, but to go out with it into the community, because, you know, the world needs music. That's why I love doing Drum Circle on the lawn, is people walking by see it, and it becomes this sort of outward and visible sign of what we're doing. Yeah, hashtag Beyond the Walls is something Monique just said. And so, yeah, there's so much potential in coming back. And that's why we want to do this intentionally in terms of coming back. I think Dan said something in the chat. We could have a hug forum where we all gather and take turns hugging each other for an hour, and that's a great idea. And the other thing I want to say about that is, because I miss the hugs so much, is that, you know, we also need to remember that there are people who aren't huggers, and people who, for a number of reasons, just like aren't interested in that, and they might be seeing stuff like that, like, please no. It's like, you know, for some people, the peace is like the best part of the service, and for other people, I've heard it described as an introvert's nightmare. And so there's going to be an opportunity for us to, you know, we have different relationships with touch, and for us to be attentive to each other. And to communicate what our touch needs are to each other, and to respect each other. And that's another level of mutuality and sharing and loving each other that we can get to. We've got a few minutes left, and we've got some questions coming in. Hannah Earnshaw said, one question to ask: at what point might small groups be able to meet on campus again? Sally, I actually want to kick that to you, because you're working with Nicole on the protocols. Sort of what's the status of small groups meeting on campus?
You know, we are able to meet in groups of 10 on campus, outside for sure. And people still need to be, you know, physically distant and masked, but that is something that we can do already. We can do that. So I don't know if that answers your questions. We are, you know, we are probably not quite yet at a place where we're ready to do like groups inside the building, but that's not far off with the changes that are happening in this way. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, and I think we're going to be able to do that. Again, this is I'm so grateful for just the work that Nicole Gatto and you and Veronica Flores and Gloria Lopez and our building and ground staff continues to be the amazing folks that they have always been for that. Juan asks, will we be having memorial services for all those that we have lost during the year? I assume the answer is yes. And Yeah, this actually gets into a whole other area. Thank you for raising that, because we have had a year where, other than a couple small occasions where we have had 2 or 3 people of family members able to be in the columbarium for like a 15-minute service, which is all that really was allowed in that space. We haven't had a memorial service, and we have lost some just amazing members of our community. I'm not going to apologize for tears. I always remember that. No, it's awful. Yeah, George Regas, among others. The list is literally too long. And so the answer is yes, and we're going to be working with the families. I know there have been a lot of families who've said, we just want to hold off until we can come together again. What that means is, as we come back together, there is going to be a huge backlog, and this is going to be something we're going to figure out, what can we do. It's also a big backlog of weddings that we're starting to get requests for. And so there's going to be a lot of weddings and a lot of memorials. We need to, I mean, Juan, you brought up George. We need to have perhaps the biggest celebration of life this community has ever had. Because George Regas deserves nothing less, and frankly, everyone deserves nothing less. And so we need to do this in a way that is thoughtful, that is careful, that really works with the families, and going to figure that out, how to do that. And that's really looking forward to a lot of that in the fall. Carolyn says, when small groups resume on campus, can we figure out a way to include Zoom for those who won't come to church? That's one of the things, you know, people talk about sort of a hybrid model of doing things. That's something that we're looking at, is how do we do that? Thanks to the work of some amazing people. We now have internet, we have internet access in the church now. I was helping do a memorial service for Frederica Branneman, for Freddie Branneman yesterday, and I streamed my part of it from standing at the altar in the church. And so we have really good internet all over the church, so we're working on that. Weddings and memorials are a lot of work for Anna and others. Amen to that. Is there a way we can provide help for all involved in the preparation? Yeah, we're going to need to put teams together for, you know, of people to help with memorials. We have teams already, but just the volume that we are looking at, we are going to need lots more folks doing this. We need to wrap up. What I want to sort of end with is, you know, some of the groups that have formed since this pandemic are really phenomenal. Stu Rosen's artists group is just phenomenal, and they're having, we're going to hear in coffee hour today about a show that they're having. And we also have a group of sort of lots of sort of creative types, musicians, directors, actors, you know, sort of you name it. That has been gathering, and you've seen some of the things that they have produced for worship and other things. And part of what we have talked about in that group, and we talked about it a bit today, is we have a need to do 2 different things as we come together. We have a need to celebrate, you know, like a hug forum or something like that. You know, can we dance in person instead of online? Yes. And we also need to grieve. And one of the things that, when a tragedy happens in a community, there's usually a physical location to it. And you see this, like, you know, you remember like 9/11, it was the Trade Center in the Pentagon. When someone is shot or killed, there's a place where that happened. That's not the case with a pandemic. Pandemics have no geographic center. And so there was no, like when Kobe Bryant died, there was, you know, at Staples Center, it was like people just knew Staples Center is where we go, because that's where we met Kobe, and that's where we fell in love with each other. And so the community came together and created amazing art out of lament and grief at Staples Center. We're going to try to find a way to do that as a community, not just for us as All Saints, but to really offer it to the wider community. And so conversations happen. I want to thank Erica Tamblin and Eddie King, who is just, you know, the builder of everything, has said that he's going to come together and do this. I'm going to share a couple pictures. There is, and I got this from Erica and some others, there is a Buddhist tradition, and I'm getting this wrong, I'm sure, and here is can y'all see that? With the structure that you see here, and what it is people come, and as Erica tells me, as I remember it, is they sort of get a fortune, and if it's a good fortune, you keep it, and if it's a sort of a not so good fortune, you tie it to the sort of cords, as a way of sort of leaving it there. And it also, we were looking for something that provides a canvas for lament, but also a place where people could leave specific things. Like you think about the Western Wall in Jerusalem. Let me share a different picture of this. And yeah, so there's a different one. And so this is what we're looking at, and it's going to be portable. And we're hoping to put it somewhere near the sidewalk so that people will know that this isn't just an All Saints thing. And we're going to sort of seed it with laments sort of tied like this on strips of cloth or paper, but also people can sort of put a picture on that of someone that they've lost. And we're going to have chalk on the ground that people can do chalk pictures of. And we're looking to have sort of what's a musical component to this and sort of artists to come. But we really want to have a space where people can just come together and lament. And what we really want to do is kind of provide a scaffolding or a canvas and then see what the community does with it. So you're going to be hearing more about this. Eddie is going to get to work building this, and we're incredibly grateful for him. But that's something that you're going to see as you come to campus. I'm not exactly sure when it will be up. And then on the flip side, we're really looking for where, as we come together, can we find ways to celebrate? And can we find ways? Can we have a hug forum? Can we have outdoor dances? Can we just let's be creative and find ways to rejoice and give thanks for the gift of life and the gift of community and the gift of each other. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. We need to wrap up because we've got to get stuff ready for the 11:15 service. Hope you'll continue to join us for that. Monique, yes.
One quick question in the Q&A about Safe Haven. Will we continue to be hosting the community of 12 who are currently unhoused after the campus opens?
Absolutely, yes. That's not going away. And we were a place where people stayed at night before the pandemic, and we've really just sort of codified that process and really made sure that it's a part of moving people into housing. And we've got the lockers, and they're here to stay. And no, this is part of our community life now, and I am so thrilled about that. And so the answer to that is yes. This is just as the folks in New Mexico and UK and whatever are part of the All Saints community. We have a piece of our community that is part of the Safe Haven program, and that's wonderful, and that ain't going away anywhere. So thank you all. I'm getting my buzzing from Keith because he's got work to do and to get us going. So jump back on over to the live stream page at allsaints-pas.org. Thanks, everybody. Next week, Kenny Turan is coming back looking at the Oscars. And so we're going to have a great conversation. We may do that one on Zoom also, so you can get all your questions in. So see you in a few minutes at the 11:15 service. Love you all.